Ben-Hur, 1959, once made cinematic history with its breathtaking chariot race scenes and legendary cast. But behind that glory, the fate of many stars ended in tragedies no one could have imagined. Some died alone from illness, others in sudden accidents, and some at the very height of their careers. How did they change over the years, and who is still alive to tell the story? Let's find out. Charlton Heston as Judah Ben-Hur. Charlton Heston was born on October 4, 1923, in Illinois, USA. When he was just 36 years old, he played Judah Ben-Hur, the betrayed prince who lost everything and found justice and faith again through the greatest chariot race ever filmed in Ben-Hur, 1959. The role not only earned Heston the Academy Award for Best Actor, but also turned him into Hollywood's epic hero icon. Yet in real life, his life story was filled with its own tragic turns. His 64-year marriage to Lydia Clark looked flawless from the outside, but in truth, it was full of silent pain. Heston was consumed by film sets, politics, and activism, leaving a deep emotional void in his family. The distance slowly became cracks, and rumors of his affairs with co-stars, combined with Lydia's own attempts to seek comfort elsewhere, turned what began as loyal love into a Cold War. His son, Fraser Clark Heston, often clashed with him over his harsh strictness, while Lydia, though by his side until the very end, lived in the shadow of a marriage that held both glory and quiet suffering. The pain grew heavier when illness struck. After hip replacement surgery in 1996 and a battle with prostate cancer in 1998, he still tried to stand strong. But in 2002, the public was stunned when he announced he had Alzheimer's disease. From a star once holding audiences with powerful speeches, he slowly lost the ability to remember words, or even recognize family members. His family was devastated, forced to watch as he drifted further into silence, sometimes sitting wordless for hours in his own home. On the morning of April 5, 2008, Charlton Heston passed away at his Beverly Hills home at the age of 84, with his lifelong wife by his side. The press later revealed the cause of death was pneumonia. He left behind an estate worth about $40 million, mostly from real estate and film contracts, to his wife and their two children, Fraser and Holly Ann. His funeral on April 12th was attended by many major figures, including Arnold Schwarzenegger, Olivia de Havilland, Tom Selleck, and Christian Bale. Stephen Boyd as Messala. Stephen Boyd was born on July 4, 1931, in Glengormley, Northern Ireland. He was only 28 years old when he played Messala, the childhood friend of Judah Ben-Hur, who turned into his bitter enemy in Ben-Hur, 1959. That fiery role brought Boyd international fame, but also locked him into villain roles, causing his career to stall after a brief blaze of glory. After his success, Boyd's love life became chaotic. He hastily married Mariella di Sarzana in 1958, but the marriage ended just 3 weeks later. He admitted himself that he was not ready to be a husband. In the following years, Boyd plunged into scandalous romances. His close friendship with Brigitte Bardot contributed to the breakdown of her marriage, and his intense, jealous affair with Marissa Mell drained both of them emotionally. Even nun-turned-actress Dolores Hart once recalled Boyd as her only true love with a co-star. But he rejected her, leaving her with lasting regret. Although he married again, this time to Elizabeth Mills in 1974, his love life remained unstable, conflicted, and deeply lonely. The pressure of his career, combined with heavy drinking and smoking, led to his declining health. On June 2, 1977, at only 45 years old, he suddenly died of a massive heart attack while playing golf with his wife in California. His death came far too soon, shocking Hollywood, especially since he was still negotiating a role in The Wild Geese. Boyd's ashes were interred at Oakwood Memorial Park Cemetery in Chatsworth, California, and later buried with his wife after her death in 2007. At the time of his passing, His net worth had dwindled to just around $750,000, a modest sum compared to his Ben-Hur peak, diminished by financial failures and lavish spending. Jack Hawkins, as Quintus Arrius. Jack Hawkins was born on September 14, 1910, in London, England. At 49 years old, he played Quintus Arrius, the dignified Roman commander who saved Judah Ben-Hur from slavery and later adopted him in Ben-Hur, 1959. Hawkins' commanding presence and seasoned performance made him one of the most memorable figures in this epic film. Yet Hawkins's personal life was far from smooth. His first marriage to Jessica Tandy collapsed in 1940 due to career conflicts, leaving behind a wound that never fully healed. In 1947, he remarried Doreen Lawrence and had 3 children, seemingly finding peace at last. But cancer of the larynx in the mid-1960s destroyed everything. A heavy smoker, Hawkins gradually lost his voice, the most precious asset of an actor, and had to rely on dubbing in his final roles. This decline pushed him into isolation, distancing him from his family, and often drove him to alcohol to escape his helplessness. In an effort to preserve his speech, Hawkins underwent surgery for an artificial larynx in May 1973. But severe hemorrhaging forced him into St. Stephen's Hospital in London, and just 2 months later, on July 18, 1973, he died at the age of 62. His role in the Tamarind Seed had to be abandoned, leaving audiences in sorrow. Hawkins was cremated at Golders Green Crematorium, the resting place of many great artists. He left behind an estate of about $1.2 million, placed in trust for his children, though legal disputes arose after his death. His autobiography, Anything for a Quiet Life, was published a few months later, serving as the final message of a gifted actor. Hugh Griffith as Sheikh Ilderim. Hugh Griffith was born on May 30, 1912, in Wales, United Kingdom. When he was 47 years old, he played Sheikh Ilderim, the wealthy Arab who lent Ben-Hur his horses and helped make the legendary chariot race possible in Ben-Hur, 1959. The role won Griffith an Academy Award, lifting his name to the height of fame. But behind the glory, his life took a darker turn. His marriage to Adelgunde von Dechend once gave him a home, but his heavy drinking habit quickly destroyed it all. Griffith was frequently absent, often erratic, and the breakdown of his family became inevitable. He grew distant from his wife and children, while his own self-destructive behavior caused the best career opportunities to slip away. Griffith's film career declined sharply as directors avoided him for showing up on set intoxicated. Alcohol led to liver disease, and chronic pain wore him down both physically and mentally. The man who once shone so brightly in a classic role became only a shadow, remembered with pity more than admiration. On May 14, 1980, Hugh Griffith died at his home in Kensington, London, just days before his 68th birthday. Death from liver failure closed the chapter on the life of a talented actor undone by his own habits. At the time of his passing, his net worth was only about $150,000, much of it depleted by medical and legal expenses. Martha Scott as Miriam. Martha Scott was born on September 22, 1912, in Missouri, USA. She was 47 years old when she played Miriam, the leprosy-stricken mother of Judah Ben-Hur, a heartbreaking role defined by sacrifice and sorrow in Ben-Hur 1959. The role, in many ways, reflected Scott's real life, which was also marked by trials and personal losses. Scott's first marriage to Carlton Alsop collapsed after 6 years due to emotional strain and career pressures. She later remarried composer Mel Powell and had 2 daughters, but family life was far from peaceful. Her daughter Catherine was born with a severe developmental disability, which left Scott consumed with worry and despair, while her husband's career created distances that were hard to bridge. Loneliness and exhaustion gradually pushed her into bouts of lingering depression. Although she achieved fame on both stage and screen, Scott often felt unfulfilled artistically. She gradually withdrew from film, choosing a quieter life, but the psychological shadows never left her. In later years, the death of her husband Mel Powell in 1998 deepened her grief, though she continued to maintain an image of dignity in public. On May 28, 2003, Martha Scott died in Los Angeles at the age of 90 from natural causes. She left behind an estate valued at around $1.8 million, drawn from real estate and film royalties, most of which was passed on to her children and grandchildren. Sam Jaffe as Simonides. Sam Jaffe was born on March 10, 1891, in New York, USA. At 68 years old, he appeared in Ben-Hur, 1959, as Simonides, the loyal steward of Judah Ben-Hur's family, a wise and devoted character who contributed moral weight to the story. The role proved that Jaffe retained sharpness even in his later years, though his real life was filled with turbulence. During the 1950s, Hollywood was gripped by political paranoia, and Jaffe was suspected of communist ties. He was blacklisted, losing many career opportunities and carrying wounds that never fully healed. His marriage to actress Betty Ackerman was also troubled. Repeated miscarriages left the couple heartbroken, unable to have children, and forced to live with a lasting emotional void that strained their relationship. As Jaffe grew older, his health deteriorated. A series of strokes gradually robbed him of his independence, leaving him reliant on others. The confident artist, once at ease on stage, now faced the helplessness of a failing body, living in loneliness and reflecting on a career eroded by politics and illness. On March 24, 1984, Sam Jaffe died in Beverly Hills, California, at the age of 93 after battling cancer. His estate, estimated at about $1 million, was left to Jewish charities and fellow artists. He was cremated, and his ashes were interred with his wife at Williston Cemetery, South Carolina, closing the life of a talented, dedicated artist weighed down by personal tragedy. Finlay Currie as Balthazar. Finlay Currie was born on January 20, 1878, in Edinburgh, Scotland. At 81 years old, he played Balthazar in Ben-Hur, 1959, one of the three wise men who brought spiritual light to Judah Ben-Hur's journey. The role, calm and wise, became a late career highlight in his decades-long acting life. But behind the scenes, Currie lived in a cold marriage with Maud Courtney. Emotional distance grew between them, and as their children grew up and left, he was left to face old age in solitude. When his health began to decline, the emptiness weighed even heavier, worsened by the lack of family companionship. In 1965, a minor stroke left him bedridden for a long period. From being a confident actor walking the sets, Currie was forced to face feelings of uselessness as cinema entered a new era he could no longer keep up with. In his final years, he sought solace in collecting coins and poetry, but loneliness never left his side. On May 9, 1968, Finlay Currie died in Buckinghamshire, England, at the age of 90. His estate, about $150,000, was largely donated to an actor's retirement fund as his final gesture to fellow performers. His ashes were scattered at Breakspear Crematorium, Middlesex, closing the life of a once respected actor whose final years were marked by illness and isolation. Cathy O'Donnell as Tirzah. Cathy O'Donnell was born on July 6, 1923, in Alabama, USA. In 1959, she appeared in Ben-Hur as Tirzah, the tragic younger sister of Judah Ben-Hur, stricken with leprosy and forced to endure cruel isolation when she was 36 years old. The role strangely mirrored O'Donnell's own real life, which was also filled with silent pain and helplessness in the face of illness. In 1948, Cathy married Robert Wyler, the brother of director William Wyler, who was 22 years her senior. The marriage produced no children and grew strained as Cathy's health declined. The age gap and her frequent illnesses weighed heavily on their relationship. Robert remained devoted and cared for his wife, but the absence of children's laughter and the long shadow of sickness left their household steeped in sadness. Her acting career was also unsteady. She was often trapped in supporting roles and never managed to break through as an A-list star. While audiences still remembered her as Tirzah in Ben-Hur, in real life O'Donnell quietly battled cancer, hiding her suffering so she could keep appearing before the camera. But as the illness worsened, her chances to work faded, and she was eventually pushed out of the industry she had once hoped to dedicate her life to. On April 11, 1970, on the exact 22nd anniversary of her wedding, Cathy O'Donnell died of a cerebral hemorrhage after a long fight with cancer at just 46 years old. Her net worth was only about $90,000, which was passed on to her husband, Frank Thring, as Pontius Pilate. Frank Thring was born on May 11, 1926, in Melbourne, Australia. He was only 33 when he played Pontius Pilate in Ben-Hur, 1959, the Roman governor caught between politics and the fate of Jesus Christ. The role left Thring with an unforgettable mark, embodying cold authority, but behind the lights was a life filled with contradictions and loneliness. In the 1950s, Thring briefly married actress Joan Cunliffe, but the union quickly ended without children. As a gay man in an era of harsh prejudice, he endured media scorn and the distance of a conservative family. His unfulfilled desire for children, coupled with the isolation of his surroundings, left his spirit in constant torment. He sought escape through flamboyance, an eccentric, provocative lifestyle, and rebellious public appearances. Yet behind the proud exterior lay years of alcoholism, diabetes, heart disease, and kidney failure that slowly consumed him. His career was repeatedly interrupted by illness, leaving Thring suspended between moments of glory and periods of obscurity. On December 29, 1994, Frank Thring died at the age of 68 from esophageal cancer. His net worth at the time was only about $120,000, much of it lost to medical costs and extravagant living. He was cremated, and his ashes were scattered off the coast of Queenscliff, Victoria. In 1995, a solemn memorial was held at the Victorian Arts Centre, closing the life of a unique artist whose story was both tragic and magnificent. George Relf as Tiberius Caesar. George Relf was born on January 27, 1888, in Cullercoats, England. At 71 years old, he appeared in Ben-Hur, 1959, as Emperor Tiberius Caesar, the man holding the supreme power of Rome. It was the final role of Relf's long career, securing him as a weighty presence in the classic epic. But his private life was heavy with loss. During World War II, he suffered the devastating death of his only son, a shock he never overcame. His marriage to Eva Moore, already strained by jealousy and disagreements, grew even colder after that tragedy. The man who projected imperial grandeur on screen spent his final years under a cloud of grief and in a fractured home. The prolonged emotional strain, combined with old age, caused Relf's health to collapse. In early 1960, he suffered a stroke, leaving his body weak and unable to enjoy the acclaim that Ben-Hur had just brought him. Professionally, he had reached great heights, but his personal life and illnesses left his spirit drained. On April 24, 1960, George Relf died in Chelsea, London, at the age of 72. His estate was worth only about $100,000, much of it diminished by post-war taxes. He was buried in a modest ceremony, remembered as a great artist who survived 2 world wars, yet ended his life with both glory and profound sorrow. Andre Morell as Sextus. Andre Morell was born on August 20th, 1909, in London, England. At 50 years old, he appeared in Ben-Hur, 1959, as Sextus, the cold Roman official who embodied authority and control. The role reinforced his image as a familiar face of British cinema, but in real life he endured great personal strain. Morell's marriage to actress Joan Greenwood seemed happy on the surface, but it was filled with resentment. Greenwood continued to enjoy a successful career, while Morell struggled to find his footing, and this imbalance created a widening gap between them. Their only son, Jason, also grew distant from his father due to constant family conflicts, leaving Morell isolated within his own home. Marital tension and professional disappointments pushed Morell into a downward spiral of drinking. By the 1960s, he had become increasingly dependent on alcohol, and his health declined rapidly. Labored breathing signaled the lung disease that was eating away at him day by day. Although he tried to appear in a few final films, he could no longer maintain the presence of his prime years. On November 28, 1978, André Morell died in London of lung cancer at the age of 69. His net worth had dwindled to about $150,000, a modest sum compared to the reputation he once built. He was laid to rest in England, leaving behind an artistic legacy and the sad story of an actor broken by marriage, career, and illness. Terence Longden as Drusus. Terence Longden was born on May 14, 1922, in Newark-on-Trent, England. In 1959, at age 37, he played Drusus, Masala's close aide in Ben-Hur. It was only a minor role, but it allowed him to leave his mark in one of Hollywood's greatest epics. Off-screen, however, Longden's life was riddled with tragedies. His marriage to Joan Lamon once promised a stable family, but it soon collapsed. Infidelities, coupled with gambling debts, fractured their relationship beyond repair. Their two sons grew up in that tense atmosphere and gradually distanced themselves from their father, leaving Longden to face years of loneliness in what was once meant to be a warm home. After the breakdown of his marriage, Longden lived more reclusively, but his health also declined steadily. Severe arthritis made daily life increasingly difficult, and mental exhaustion led him to withdraw from the entertainment industry. The actor who once walked confidently across film sets became a frail old man, living quietly in his Gloucestershire home. On April 23, 2011, Terence Longden died at the age of 88 from pneumonia, after a long battle with illness. At the time of his death, his estate was worth only about $50,000, much of it lost to debts and taxes. He was buried in a simple ceremony, closing the life of a talented actor scarred by the tragedies of marriage and illness. Haya Harareet as Esther. Haya Harareet was born on September 20, 1931, in Haifa, Israel. When she was only 28 years old, she shone in Ben-Hur, 1959, as Esther, the loyal and gentle lover of Judah Ben-Hur. It was the biggest role of her career, but it also became too big a shadow, one she could never step out from under. In her personal life, Harareet faced broken marriages. Her first marriage to engineer Israel Nachman Zerwanitzer ended quietly and quickly. Later, when she married director Jack Clayton, the relationship fractured under the weight of professional jealousy and lifestyle differences. Having no children, she carried a lasting loneliness, choosing to live away from the spotlight and keeping her distance from the press. Alongside emotional wounds, her health began to decline. Chronic arthritis limited her public appearances, while financial insecurity forced her to live frugally. The actress, who was once in high demand, became just a name echoing from the past, living in a small house in England, quietly watching the film world change. On February 3, 2021, Haya Harareet died in Marlow, Buckinghamshire, at the age of 89. She left behind a net worth of about $250,000, mostly from royalties and her modest home. Harareet is remembered as the last surviving member of the principal cast of Ben-Hur, a star who once shone brilliantly but chose to retreat into solitude. Marina Berti as Flavia. Marina Berti was born on September 29, 1924, in London, England. At 35 years old, she played Flavia, a Roman noblewoman who appeared in the court scenes, adding elegance to the grandeur of Ben-Hur, 1959. It was one of nearly 100 roles she performed throughout her long career in Italian and American cinema. Behind the screen, however, Berti's private life was filled with sorrow. She married actor Claudio Gora in 1944 and had several children, but family life was far from peaceful. Her husband's infidelities and their emotional distance fractured the marriage. The greatest tragedy struck in the 1970s when one of her children died in a car accident. A loss that shattered her spirit, drove her into repeated nervous breakdowns, and tore apart what little family bond remained. These wounds left her increasingly withdrawn, confined to repetitive supporting roles. Though she continued to appear in films until the end of her life, Berti spent her later years weighed down by grief. Heart disease left her constantly fatigued, while a loveless home and the memory of her child's death cast shadows over her final days. On October 29, 2002, Marina Berti died in Rome, Italy, from heart failure at the age of 78. Her net worth was about $500,000, divided among her 4 surviving children. She passed away quietly, closing the journey of a talented actress whose private life was consumed by infidelity, loss, and illness. Claude Heater as Jesus. Claude Heater was born on October 25, 1927, in Oakland, California, USA. He was only 32 years old when he was chosen to appear in Ben-Hur, 1959, as Jesus Christ, though his face was almost never shown, only seen from behind, creating a deeply spiritual image. While it was not a major role, it introduced Heater's name to audiences worldwide. His personal life, however, was far from smooth. After several failed romances and a broken marriage, he lived in prolonged loneliness. The strain of marital conflict eroded his faith in family stability, and with no children, he faced old age without companionship. Leaving Hollywood to pursue an opera career, he devoted himself fully to music, but a vocal injury forced him to switch from baritone to tenor, a change that placed immense pressure on both his body and spirit. In later years, Heater gradually withdrew from the stage, living quietly and avoiding interviews, partly due to financial insecurity and partly because of declining health. He suffered from recurring heart problems, and arthritis made walking difficult. The man who had once performed triumphantly on European opera stages now lived modestly in a small home, carrying both pride and regret. On May 28, 2020, Claude Heater died in San Francisco, California, from cardiovascular disease at the age of 92. At the end of his life, his net worth was estimated at around $1 million, accumulated from his opera career and film royalties. He is remembered as the face who embodied the image of Jesus in Ben-Hur, and as a gifted opera singer, though his private life was filled with solitude and silence. The stories behind Ben-Hur remind us that glory and tragedy often walk hand in hand. Which actor's fate surprised you the most? Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe to discover more hidden secrets of Hollywood.